Our next speaker, Mr. Geoff Brox, General Manager and founder of First Step Middle East Africa, speaking on today's topic, market surveillance in a post-COVID world, what we can do to maintain strong surveillance capabilities with many employees working from home. Over to you, Geoff. What an exciting topic.
Thank you very much, Melvin, and thank you all to the organisers of the Qatar Fintech Summit for the invitation to speak today. Delighted to have been able to listen into many of the sessions today, and hopefully we can have an informative session now talking about market surveillance. So the sessions I've noticed today, there's been some underlying themes running through a lot of the sessions, which is always interesting to pick out what they are, but I think one of the primary ones was around the focus on the customer. Right from the beginning, we saw Dr. Sitharaman talk about the importance of customers and the needs of them are absolutely paramount. In the previous session, we heard about customer centricity. And interestingly, since COVID-19, we've seen an awful lot of focus on what the customer wants as opposed to what we think they want. And today, hopefully, we can pick out a few more interesting anecdotes about what we're seeing in the region. So we'll run through firstly an introduction to First Step MEA, who we are, and then we'll look at what's new post-pandemic, and then talk a bit about market surveillance and how the regulators see it. So First Step MEA has been in operation now for 2 years. We focus specifically on providing market surveillance and cybersecurity solutions to buy-side firms, tier one banks, trading houses, brokerages, of which there are many across the region. And many of them have implemented some fantastic trade floor surveillance tools and capabilities. If I look at some of the tier one banks, for example, in the region, they have full trading floors. On those trading floors, we used to have, tens, hundreds of traders who were very, very well monitored and surveilled using CCTV cameras. We had smart card access into those trading floors, and everything was hunky-dory. Everything was working fine until, of course, 18 months ago, when those very same traders have been asked to go and work from home. And that's become a real challenge for the regulator and for the banks themselves. How do we monitor a trader who's sat at home with his or her mobile phone? And we've noticed big organizations, big banks, really encouraging people to stay at home and work from home. Schroders, for example, you can see a screenshot there. Twitter asking them to work from home forever. Interestingly, this has forced employees and, more importantly, the customer to start using tools such as WhatsApp to communicate. And interestingly, that's popped up a couple of times today in earlier sessions. I think Infobot mentioned it a few times about the increased use of WhatsApp. Now, interestingly, a survey recently in the UAE showed that UAE employees, there were around 90% of UAE employees admitted to sharing business sensitive data over WhatsApp. Now, WhatsApp is often called a shadow IT tool. It's a tool that is prevalent throughout the organization, but nobody owns it within the company. IT department don't own it, compliance don't own it, and it's a real headache. And I have conversations with heads of compliance within banks, within brokerages, scratching their heads today saying, Geoff, how on earth do I monitor and surveil my traders? Their customers are WhatsApping them now, asking them to place trades, and I have no visibility into this. I can't control it. So it's a real challenge, and it's something that we at First Step MEA are helping our customers try and overcome, and in a sensible way to enable them to have full visibility into the behaviour of both customer and trader. If they're going to want to if the customer's going to want to start to talk on these platforms, then how do we actually monitor? So if we look at the average market surveillance requirements within a trading floor or within a brokerage, there's two types of surveillance that we talk to customers about. Firstly, one is trade surveillance. And trade surveillance covers all types of market manipulation, all types of market abuse. And we have tools that have been developed over many years that have incorporated things like machine learning, incorporated artificial intelligence to now try and analyze and identify market abuse. Things like intermarket sweep orders are often referred to, spoofing, things like layering, wash trading, all very common types of market abuse. And these tools we've been able to implement regionally in the UAE. We've got customers using these trade surveillance tools that can be implemented, very quickly, both on premise, in the cloud, that enable you to look out for this type of market manipulation and market abuse. There's been a big increase in the need or the demand for digital asset trading. You've seen organizations pop up globally like Coinbase. There's also many firms and exchanges now looking to encourage digital asset trading in the region as well. And we've had many inquiries by customers asking, well, how do we surveil digital asset trading? Is it different to the traditional assets? And this is an evolving market as well for us. So trade surveillance is evolving in the digital space, especially in the region. And we're excited to see how that's developing and how the regulators are adapting to this type of requirement. How do we actually surveil, and what are we actually going to allow or not allow within digital asset trading? So on the other side of the coin, we have communication surveillance, and you can see here some of the types of communication that are conducted on a daily basis within any trading organization. It's quite phenomenal to see all the types of different mediums they use to communicate. You see WeChat there. WeChat's a big platform used in Asia. WhatsApp, of course, we heard earlier that WhatsApp is now the most commonly used chat platform in Middle East, North Africa. Then, of course, we've got traditional voice, traditional SMS. We've got the landlines, the desk phones. There are so many different types of comms platforms. Email, we've got standard email, we've got Gmail, we've got Microsoft Exchange. And then we've got some of the trading platforms themselves that have their own comms capability inside, like Bloomberg Chat. We've got Thomson Reuters. The list goes on and on and on. And we work very closely with our partner VoxSmart, which is a leader in communication surveillance tools. And very interestingly, we've recently implemented VoxSmart at a global trading floor on the Abu Dhabi global markets in the free zone. So it's a very interesting and very fast growing area. So the regulators themselves, as I mentioned earlier, have a challenge because we see things are changing very, very quickly, especially when we start talking about digital asset trading. We recently did a webinar with Dubai Gold and Commodities Exchange. They've already released strong recommendations to their members around the use of trade surveillance tools. And we recently did a very interesting session with their members around how do they themselves empower their members and their brokers, perhaps to work from home, but to use tools and techniques to be able to successfully monitor and surveil the interactions between customer and trader. It's all very well monitoring the trades themselves on the trading platforms, but if we're going to try and build some context around the activity before, during, and after the trade was placed, then we need to really start looking at communication surveillance as well. The regulator has a challenge when it comes to monitoring comms platforms. Interestingly, we've noticed at First Step MEA since COVID-19, a 170% increase in the demand and the need to record mobile devices. I've had calls from compliance heads. They've got 20 brokers normally sitting in the office, now sitting at home. They need to be able to record those WhatsApp conversations between their trader and the customer. In case of a discrepancy, in case of a dispute, if they want to just record, to be able to ensure quality assurance. Now, many of the regional regulators follow European standards and other international standards, one of them being ESMA. Now, ESMA with relation to MiFID II, which is another regulation specifically for financial services. Now, MiFID II specifically says and mandates there must be a capability to record communications on a mobile device. Now, interestingly, when COVID-19 hit, it left the regulators scratching their head as to, well, how can we record comms between customer and trader if our traders are sitting at home? And one of the recommendations that ESMA made was that the traders should perhaps record minutes of each conversation, whether it be WhatsApp or whether it be voice calls. Please make written notes and record your communications so you can hand those to your compliance officer. So they're asking the trader to make written notes, which I think you and I know in that fast-paced world, I really can't imagine anybody actually putting pen to paper to record these types of things. So we need to be innovative. We need to start looking at technology to be able to overcome some of these big challenges. I mentioned our partner VoxSmart that we work with. We've implemented some solutions locally. I think we heard earlier that 50% of clients now communicate through mobile or web with their bank. And that's just, that could be through things like chatbots that we heard about earlier. But if we're actually talking about human to human, the demand by the customer to communicate on WhatsApp or WeChat or on the phone, on voice calls with that trader who's now sat at home, there's a huge increase and demand for this. So we've implemented things like mobile capture for our customers. We're recording 5 million plus messages per month now for customers in tier 1 banks, some of the largest banks and most well-known organizations globally that we're working with. And we're now delighted to say that we're working with some of the tier 1 banks here regionally as well. So WhatsApp capture, we capture, it's possible, we can do it, and we can showcase that really well now. So that's an exciting development, and it's enabled those banking organizations to empower their traders to continue to work from home if they so desire, because we can capture that information straight off of the mobile device. The second part is the broader communications surveillance piece. So once we've actually captured that mobile data, what do we actually want to do with it? And our communications platform, our surveillance platform, enables you to ingest any comms from any platform that we talked about earlier. So it could be WeChat, but it could also be your traditional email as well. So having the ability to ingest all of that different data, whether it be from WeChat or WhatsApp or email, and then running your surveillance over that data. So your own lexicons, for example, what is it that you really want to know about? What is it you're really interested in knowing about with regards to, it could be market abuse, it could be specifically relating to an individual trade that an individual has placed. Let's analyze all those communications channels and pull out information relating specifically to an individual trade ID, for example. The third area that we help with is full trade reconstruction and reconciliation with our customers. So, for example, in the UAE, Central Bank at the moment has insisted that organizations that file a suspicious activity report now need to do it within 35 days rather than 90 days. That's a huge ask for the compliance officer. That's a huge ask to go and trawl back through months and months of data to provide that information relating to a specific activity report. We've been able to do that now in minutes rather than months. And I mean minutes rather than months. Is full trade reconstruction across all communications channels within minutes. It's a phenomenal advance in communications. And this has been driven a lot also by the post-pandemic need of the home worker. Is how can we get to that information as quickly as possible? So being able to reduce those man hours in investigating suspicious activities, but also continuing to enable the new post-pandemic worker. So we've just hit our 15 minutes. A couple of conclusions. that I'd like to draw from today's session. Firstly, consumers' needs are paramount, and we heard that right from the beginning. We heard it in the last session about customer centricity. So we always, are continuing to keep our customers at the forefront. It was interesting. I heard earlier about, listening to customers, but seeing how they behave, right? And that's really important. Is us, a first step MEA is the consultative approach of trying to really understand the customer's process as it stands at the moment, and seeing how we can work and align with their current processes. With regards to surveillance, context is key within surveillance. Traditional trade surveillance platforms are absolutely paramount and strongly recommended by organizations like the exchanges that we mentioned earlier. But having the context around what took place an hour before that trade was placed, what conversations took place on the mobile device, on the WhatsApp between trader and buyer, what did the buyer ask the trader to do an hour before the trade was played? That context is really important. And then, of course, the context around the email that was sent to the client after the trade was placed. Who said what, where, and when? These are really important questions that the regulator will ask. And these are real headaches for compliance teams, not just in the region, but globally. Providing that context is absolutely essential. And it's important for us to enable our clients to embrace their preferred platforms. If my customer wants to talk on WhatsApp and he or she is one of my top 10 customers, then we need to find a way to enable them to use the platforms that they like. And that could be WhatsApp. Who knows what it could be? Who knows what it could be in a year's time? The tech is there to support it. So let's start to look at how we can embrace it. If it's a chat bot, for example, how do we record and surveil the conversations between those chatbots? And finally, I would say digital asset trading. We know it's growing fast, and we can now monitor it. We have the tools in place to surveil and monitor those things. So finally, I would encourage you to come and visit our booth if you have time during the rest of the day. We've got some great videos there. We can do some fantastic demos, show you how we do the recordings. The team are there ready and waiting to meet with you. So I wish you all the very best for the rest of the day. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.
Thank you, Geoff, for your presentation. And attendees, yes, they have a first step is available at the exhibition booth. Please do go check the products, services, and get more details. Thank you, Geoff. Have a fantastic day ahead.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you. Bye-bye.